From the White House to the classroom, Anita McBride has built a career at the intersection of public service, diplomacy, and education. Over more than 2 decades in the White House, she served 3 U.S. presidents, most notably as Chief of Staff to First Lady Laura Bush, directing initiatives on education, women's empowerment, and human rights. Today, she is the executive in residence at American University School of Public Affairs, where she leads programs on the legacies of America's First Ladies. She is also a founding member of the First Ladies Initiative at the Bush Institute and serves on multiple boards, continuing her leadership on civic education and international leadership. But of course, to her, most importantly, she's on the Leadership Council of Concordia. Anita, I'm so glad we can sit down together, and thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the Swift Hour.
Thank you for having me, Matt. It's terrific. I've often, every year that I've come to the Concordia Summit and I see you interviewing people, I always said, I wonder when Matt's going to ask me to come talk with you. And here we are. It's terrific on your 15th anniversary. Congratulations.
Well, and you hold a sort of a great distinction, which is you've been with us from the very, very beginning. I will never forget where I was. We've got to take a minute to talk about this because I'll never forget where we were. Incredible moment in the history of Concordia. We had decided we were going to host a summit in September of 2011. No matter what. We had no funding, we had no staff, we had no experience. I was 24, Nick was 22. And we had invited President George W. Bush.
Right.
And I was at a Nationals baseball game when I got a call from Mrs. McBride calling me to say that the president wanted to come to our first ever summit.
That's right.
And that was a just game-changing moment in Concordia's history. And he was our first keynote speaker.
I remember
he
well.
Came back subsequent years later, which was incredible.
And Mrs. Bush did too on multiple occasions. No, it was a wonderful, it was a wonderful opportunity for him too. And your first summit was so interesting. I remember it so well. You did sort of a mock terrorist attack on the country with all of the players globally around the world that would have to respond to that. But the president was really, I think he saw in you and Nick just 2 incredibly young entrepreneurs that were going to make something really good happen.
Wow. His trust, which was really based upon your trust of Concordia.
It was my pleasure to do it.
Meant a lot. And I'm sure there were certain moments where you're like, what am I doing here?
I remember there only being about 120 people at that first. And now you're almost 4,000. It's remarkable. Thank you.
No, well, thank you. It's so good to see you. So I want to dive into an area that I will say with confidence, you are the foremost expert in the world on. And I think it's some things that is oftentimes overlooked, but actually incredibly important, which is the power of first ladies, the power of spouses of leaders, because in so many ways you have these positions where you don't have a rule book to it. You're not an employee of a government.
Correct.
But you have an unbelievable microphone.
That's right.
And I want to talk about your overall experience working with First Ladies specifically.
Sure.
You've had a number of different roles in various administrations, 3 administrations working in the White House. But as we talked about, your last role was as Chief of Staff to Laura Bush during a very critical time for the country.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about the power that First Ladies bring to the table.
Well, you teed it up perfectly on a couple of fronts. Number one, in our Constitution, in the U.S. Constitution, there's only 35 words that make up the oath of office to the President of the United States. That's it, 35, but not one word about the First Lady or the President's spouse, what they're supposed to do. And there is no statutory responsibility, no obligations, no budget, no salary for them. But I find that, and what I saw as a front row seat to history to the position, is how empowering that really is. That the platform is redefined, the role is redefined by each occupant that comes in, takes their interests and brings them to the table to support the presidency, to support the president, because they're not the elected official. So it is a fine line to cross from being policy advocate to policy maker. But there are a couple of factors that make it possible for them to be successful or not. First of all, does the president support what they're doing? And does the president appreciate the role? Because that makes it easier, certainly within the context of the White House, for the First Lady to get the support that she needs. So I did watch the position, and it has transformed over our 250-year history. And that is the basis of the 3 books, really, that I've written on this topic, is so what is the status of women in our country over this 250 years of our nation? How have First Ladies been able to, when we had no rights, for 133 years, women had no rights in our country, but how were they still able to elevate the platform, elevate their position, and actually make contributions? And throughout our history, they have. They've been supportive of social movements, of labor movements, of environmental movements. Lady Bird Johnson, the first conservationist First Lady, the Highway Beautification Act was passed because of her. It's so much so, and the president recognized it, that when he signed the bill in 1965, he turned around and handed her the signing pen because of all she did. So it's a transformative role, one with great flexibility, an incredible platform and podium. The minute that the president is sworn into office, the First Lady or the president's spouse has a powerful platform too.
How much of that is proactive versus reactive? How much of it is based on what the president's agenda is versus what the first, in the case of our history, the First Ladies?
Yes. Yes. Well, I think the one thread of connectivity for our First Ladies through history is a couple of things. They do worry about the health, safety, and security of the president, of their husbands. That's always top of mind. They also really want the president's legacy and their presidency to be successful. So they are finding ways that they can take their background, their interests, to contribute to what the goals of the administration are. Particularly, my work with Mrs. Bush, she came in as a teacher, as a librarian. The president's major domestic initiative was education reform, No Child Left Behind. Of course, 9/11 happened 9 months later, and that changed the trajectory of many things. But still, Laura Bush, who had been an education reform advocate in Texas as First Lady of Texas, brought that experience, brought that knowledge to the White House, and went about, being an additive and a complement to what the president was trying to do. But then also taking something that was more personal to her, the book festival that she started in Texas. The Texas Book Festival, 1996, is still going on. Launched it in Washington in 2001. That's still going on. So there are things that, because they're able to focus on more limited number of responsibilities, they could really drill down and make a lasting contribution, something that outlives the time they're in office.
But I think, to your point, though, it's a fascinating look at the design of this capacity of power.
Yes.
Because it is a substantive
That's right.
element. We just recently saw a bill that was greatly credited with Mrs. Trump.
That's right.
As the sole reason that it was passed. And so there is a genuine basis of power in those positions. I want to talk about your new initiative called In Pursuit, but before we do that, I want you to tell me a little bit about the First Lady's initiative.
Sure.
And what its objective is.
Great. Thank you for asking about that. Well, when I left the White House in 2009, really, I didn't know what I was going to do. I did know one thing. I was really tired. I could barely put one foot in front of the other. We had just traveled 67 countries in 4 years, all 50 states. Again, the additive.
We're talking 67 countries and 50 and all 50 states for 4 years.
Just really incredible. And some of that, the domestic initiatives that Mrs. Bush was engaged in, the national parks, the youth at risk initiative, education, libraries, literacy, women's heart health. I mean, it was a lot. And she really wanted, at the second term, she really realized the time, the days are long, but the years are very short. And she wanted to accomplish a a lot. And so we didn't waste any time. And the travel, around the world, a lot to Afghanistan. Of course, that was a priority for her to help Afghan women, while, of course, the president is prosecuting 2 wars.
And I remember that iconic image. I've told you this before. I think the most powerful images of that time is this circular couch in Afghanistan of all of these women completely covered, and then Mrs. Bush sitting right in the middle.
There,
remember that.
Going to a dormitory that she helped to establish only for women on the grounds at Kabul University, so that women were actually coming back into the education system, and they were able to go safely, or their families would allow them to go because they were going to be with women. But I think, the part of it, and to answer your question, I'm trying to give an idea to your listeners just how multifaceted this role is. I mean, we could go from planning a secret trip to Afghanistan in the morning to planning Queen Elizabeth's state dinner in the afternoon. And that focus, too, on diplomacy, the traditional role, the role that is the social hostess, is not to be diminished. It's so important. There is strategic purpose for diplomacy and for protocol and for state dinners at the White House. And the First Lady oversees all of that. So I got to see how multifaceted this role is. Even though I worked in the White House 3 times, this was a front row seat to history of just how much we were doing. And when I left, I heard from the president of American University, came and met with me at the White House. So we're really watching with growing interest, recent First Ladies, Mrs. Clinton, Mrs. Bush, heavily engaged in a lot of global and domestic issues. And could you put something together that we could review the impact of First Ladies and their legacies on all these different sectors in society that would fit within our School of Public Affairs, a public service, degree, basically, understanding what the First Lady's contribution was. So that's what I set about doing. Coming out of there, I had a number of contacts, relationships with with presidential libraries and National Archives, White House Historical Association. I pulled all the best experts together, authors who had written books about First Ladies. The scholarship is really growing now on this topic. First Ladies are having their moment. There's a lot more knowledge about them, a lot more appreciation.
It wasn't the case.
So it wasn't the case. Yeah. And just, if we talk about inclusive history in our country, we cannot not include these women. And so this has been what I've led at American University for the last 11 years, believe it or not, conferences, now, lectures around the country, partnerships with other historic institutions. It led to writing, 3 books, the first ever textbook on the topic of First Ladies that I co-authored. It was published in 2023. Go figure. There's never been a textbook at any level in any classroom in our country. And then we adapted it for a regular reader. The book you can buy on Amazon, which I've done over 80 events in the last year. It's really a popular book. And then co-authored this year with my daughter, who studied to be an elementary school teacher, Giovanna, of a book of First Ladies Make History for elementary school level. So we're trying to get it into everyone's hands to understand the contributions these women have made.
So then you're taking... We talked about the First Ladies initiative, and now you've launched this initiative In Pursuit, which is this catalog, if you will, of key lessons learned, wisdom learned from American leaders, or specifically
some
spouses
and spouses too. So this is a effort that just was launched last week on Constitution Day at American University. Was the host for this. But this is a project of an organization called More Perfect. And that's a collaboration amongst 40 presidential centers in the country. And it was an idea that was born out of the White House Historical Association's Presidential Sites Summit, where we convene, because I'm on that board, as you know, we convene presidential centers every 2 years, all 200 plus of them, in Washington, to network with each other, come up with ideas that they can work on with each other. It was their idea to form sort of a collaboration amongst the centers themselves. And this project called In Pursuit was just announced, part of the More Perfect umbrella. It's a national civic education project. We just felt that the lens of leadership through the presidents. And I was asked to be part of this. I said, I'll do it if you include first ladies in the lens of leadership lessons too. So it'll be a catalog of essays that will be released starting on President's Day in February. George W. Bush is writing the first essay on George Washington. Barack Obama will be writing on Abraham Lincoln. Bill Clinton will be writing on Theodore Roosevelt. Laura Bush is writing on Lady Bird Johnson, another favorite first lady of hers. Mrs. Obama is writing on Jacqueline Kennedy. Mrs. Clinton is writing on Eleanor Roosevelt. And then beyond that, I asked the Chief Justice to participate, and he's writing the essay on William Howard Taft, the only president to actually serve as a justice of the Supreme Court. And then from there, we've enlisted others: Ken Burns, Doug Brinkley, scholars, authors, journalists. Brett Baer is writing a piece for us on Ulysses S. Grant. Stanley McChrystal is writing about General Eisenhower. So I'm writing about Bess Truman, a first lady who the research that I did on my book, I was so surprised at her contributions that no one knew about. And so anyway, it will be a collection of essays starting in February throughout 2026. And we do hope it will be published as a book. It's going to be distributed through Substack, a modern way of sort of getting a wide distribution. And then we'll take it down to a children's level too, through some videos through YouTube Kids, we hope.
Well, one of the things I think, and I've known you for a long time, and your knowledge of civics is so powerful, and your entire career has been dedicated to public service. And I think, first off, I was so happy to watch so much of the coverage of Constitution Day last week. I thought it was some of the most coverage I'd seen before on it. It's very exciting to see everything happening with the 250th anniversary for the country, and hopefully that, but also projects and initiatives like In Pursuit increase the quality of civic education in this country, because it is lacking in a pretty significant way. And at a time when I think we're in this battle to figure out where we want to go.
That's exactly right. No, you're right. We think this is a perfect moment. Listen, any major anniversary of any kind is an opportunity to reflect and think about what the next steps are for the future. So I'm thrilled about this opportunity. I think it will be an important contribution to our civic education, and people are hungry for it. They really are. And, we live in a great country. In our country, you'll see through these essays, through the challenges we have faced since our founding, there was no guarantee this system of democracy, of a republic, a government run by the people, was going to succeed, but it did. And it will constantly face challenges. But we are in pursuit of a more perfect union. So let's take lessons from the past to help guide the decision makers for the future.
Well, thank you, Anita McBride. Thank you for
Mel.
all of the work you're doing, and excited to see these essays come out.
Great.
I know that I will absolutely be reading them, so thank you.
I'm grateful you gave me a chance to talk about it. Thanks so much, and congratulations again to you, Matt.
Thank you.